Welcome to the Two Regular Teachers podcast. My name is Rick Taylor-Thompson.
And I'm Adam Lavaz, and thank you for joining us for what's episode 5, fresh off the holidays, mate. And how are yours?
Well, quite good, mate. I must admit they were quite low-key. We were thinking of getting together, weren't we, in the second week? But it's nice to have a bit of a refresher and come back, I guess,
it is.
With a refreshed mind, though, isn't it?
And look, going from what we were talking about last term, it's a busy end of the term. That middle holidays, it's cold, it's wet, it's wintry. You kind of just want to stay inside with a good book and a cup of jarrah or something like that.
Well, it was certainly that sort of weather. That's sure. And I must admit, we did get away somewhere in the first week where there was an open fire, and there's nothing like recuperating by an open fire.
Yes, and by we he means he and his partner Ange, not both of us that are going away sitting in front of an open fire. But
not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wring with that. But look, we've come back from the holidays too, and anybody listening out there, to probably the worst day that we've had all year. I mean, it was almost going to be as bad that the department actually sent an email warning us about this weather. It was going to be that bad.
But yet, I can recall some worse days of weather this year, Adam.
Yeah,
I
me too.
don't know about you.
They kind of just butted us up, and now they're going to send us along and just to keep us on our toes. But as I was saying before, I had to go out and do yard duty for 25 minutes today, and for those that know me, there's not a lot of hair left on the head. It was cold. There were almost icicles forming on my head. It was that bad. I left my beanie at home, and boy did I pay for it.
Oh, that would have been quite brutal.
Yeah, I ended up hiding around corners, just out of the wind. Hiding out. The kids can see you from a distance, and you try and push them away. No, you'll be right. You don't want to venture out too far.
Speaking of brutal, I've got two things. I'm amazed at one, just about that, how there's so many kids at our school still who are wearing polos and shorts out there today.
I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they do it.
I used to wear shorts all through my high school years, but I'd still always have thick jumper on top.
Yeah, and I was the same too.
Or a thick sweater for our international listeners.
There you go. There. And I reckon you can see them in line in the morning. When you get to the line, the kids are lining up outside. You pick them up straight away because you go, why are you wearing that? Aren't you cold? No, they yell at the no for that. You're going, you've got to be cold, and you've got your jumper on, a jacket on, pants and everything, and you're still cold. I don't know what they're doing.
Absolutely. And look, before we get into our first topic, my second brutal example is the transition from holidays to the first week. Now, I know that I know people complain about teachers' holidays. However, it is quite a brutal, because you are in the mode of holidays at that final weekend, and then bang, on the Monday morning, you're back into it. And there's no sort of ease in with teaching. You walk in 9 o'clock, the kids, don't walk in at 9. I walk in at 8, so do you. Kids walk in at 9, but they're right in front of you, and it's time, you're back in that work, mode.
You've almost got to switch on.
It's like you've got to hit the switch on. Yeah, it's really
and I think it really sets in for me is on that Sunday night before you go back at about 6:30. You kind of sat down, you've had a bit of dinner, you're feeling good, you're thinking the last couple of Sunday nights, you've had a lovely dinner and gone, I've got nothing on tomorrow, so it's going to be so fantastic. And then all of a sudden you're going, I've actually got to be ready to go. And did I remember to have that ready to go for my first lesson on Monday morning?
But I tell you what,
sets in, I reckon.
It does sit in, fear, But I tell you what though, by 9:05, seeing refreshed students is fantastic. Like my kids were happy, they had stories to tell.
Me too.
It really reminded me that it is good to be back.
And it is really good to be back. And we're looking forward to getting into the podcast today and talking about a variety of issues. So Rick, let's get stuck in. So Rick, now that we're back from term 2 and we've started term 3, obviously reports have gone home, and we thought it was a really good opportunity to have some time for reflection. And one of the things that came up for me was that over the holidays I read a terrific article about reporting jargon and what goes home to parents, and it was written by Paul Chai, who writes for the Daily Life, and it really resonated with me. And I know, just talking to you before, it hit home for you too.
It did, Adam, and it was interesting because during the reading of it I had some moments of anger where I was a bit angry at what his reflections were.
Yes.
And then I also had some moments of, yes, you're absolutely right, I agree.
Yep. And that's what it was. And I thought it was a terrific article, and it was kind of almost the ups and downs. I was agreeing and nodding in some parts and going, no, that's totally wrong in other parts, and you've missed the point. But one of the things that stood out is he got his son's report, and he put an example of some of the wording on there in the article, and this is what it was, and it said, his concrete understanding of number and place value allows him to effectively implement a range of strategies to solve addition and subtraction problems. And his comment to that underneath was, when I take away the rubbish from this, I guess he can add and subtract. And I thought to myself, you know what? He is absolutely right. And I think back to reporting when we were kids and we would get our reports, there would be nothing like that at all. And you could still look at that and go, well, you can add and subtract. And you sometimes think, are we going too far with the jargon? Are we trying to sound too clever? Are we giving them too much information? Rather just saying, yes, your son can add and subtract, you know?
It's interesting because I feel, since I started this job 9 years ago, that it's a bit like a tug of war with jargon in reports, that I've been pulled one way 1 year and about actually making it sound, I guess, what they call professional with lots of jargon, and then being pulled the other way the next year saying we need to make our reports more personal.
Yes.
However, you still have to, your comments about the students' achievements still need to match the curriculum statements.
They do, and you pull so many different ways, and it's and another one he put up there was an example that he put was that his son had the ability to model inclusion to his peers. That was on his report, and his response to that was, well, so he's inclusive, or a psychopath who is able to model inclusion but really not give a rat's, you know? And you kind of read that and you kind of nod and go, well, I can see where he's coming from. Like, why can't we just say, yeah, he gets along with his peers really well, or he finds it difficult? Why can't we just have either way rather than give them too much information?
Absolutely. Well, there's always been arguments about length of reports, Adam, for sure, and the amount that we've written for parents over the years. But I guess I want to compare between what I've written on past student reports and compare that to what I've been writing in the conferencing, the one-on-one conferencing that we're doing, that we've discussed in previous podcasts, what we're doing at our school at the moment. Because the conferencing that we're doing is giving me a chance to be a little bit more personal and a little bit more, maybe not honest, because my reports are honest, but trying to write it trying to write it in language that'll be more understandable for
Yes, that's
parents.
right, without going over the top.
So, for example, in a conference that I actually had 3 hours of conferencing today, and in one of them, we were talking about writing with this particular student, and my first two sentences were, this student could not quite remember if he had completed his procedural text today. He had trouble finding it. So that they were my first two comments for writing for this student this week. And I think, and I hark back to Chai's article that you mentioned, that he said he's not afraid of hearing that his child's doing poorly or needs to improve in some sort of area. And I have had one parent who said to me that they were happy to read some of the stuff that they've read in my conferencing notes, seeing the reality of the classroom. I have had students come along, and you've got to be honest, if they can't find the piece of writing that we did the day before, obviously I will support them eventually to find it.
Of course,
but that's the comment that they're going to get.
And the support's not the argument here. It's more about the where he said, "I'm not afraid of hearing it." It's what we're trying to get across to parents, and this is what he wrote: is it's being lost in the impenetrable gibberish of half-term assessment. Rather than just coming out and saying it, we almost kind of go around in circles for that fear of, well, we don't want to say they're too bad or this, and the parents will come up and all that stuff. Rather than just coming out saying, look, they need this, they need to work on this, and you need to help them. It's kind of lost in amongst all these big words and long-winded comments that almost get you nowhere. So
absolutely. So I think that his article and his concerns as a parent really tie in with what we've talked about in previous podcasts about ongoing assessment, that providing anecdotal notes, whether it be or maybe an audio recording of a one-on-one conference with a student, something that is more, this is really what's happening in the classroom, and it'll be in words and language that the parents can understand.
And I think if we can get to that and get straight to the point, I think reporting will be much better for parents in the long term. And just at the end of that discussion too, Rick, as we finish and move on to the next one, that the article will be on the blog, and I think it really, for all teachers out there, it's definitely worth a look. It's a really good article, and it will, at times you'll read that and go, no, that's not what we're after, that's not what teachers are about and that sort of stuff, but there are bits there where it will really hit home for you. So if you want to check that out, check out the blog after the listen to the podcast.
So Adam, as you mentioned at the top of this podcast, it is term 3, and I can recall even as a student, as a primary student, thinking that term 3 was always that sort of middle of the year sort of term. It always seemed maybe a bit easier. And then as a teacher, I remember when we were going through university and doing our practicum, and then in the early years of my career, there was always sort of this statement by some teachers: term 3, right? We don't have reports, we don't have interviews, we don't have this and that. But I've I've learned that that's just a myth.
Yeah,
There's no such thing as a quiet term.
No, and it was always hinted at. It was almost like term 3 was this oasis in the distance halfway through term 2. And once you get there, you'll be all right, you know.
Yeah.
Term 4 is always busy with, term 3 is your good term. You can sink your teeth into some teaching and just not take it easy, but it's a little bit more straightforward. Biggest load of rubbish I've ever heard.
It is.
It really is.
I think there is
not
some.
at all.
I think there is some truth to the fact that maybe you get back to doing some real teaching in
Yes.
term 3 because
Yeah.
you don't have all the assessment. All that formal assessment
Yep.
you have to do, but we've got school athletics, we've got school concert preparation,
Yep.
we've got a few school camps this term.
Yes.
Like, I've
Yep.
got our grade 5 one, but there's a grade 6 one, there's a grade 4 one, I think.
Yep.
You've got lots of things on this term as well.
Yeah,
haven't you?
we've got 2 camps. I'm going on both of those.
Wow.
As the only male teacher, I've got to go on both. So I've got to go
brutal.
on both of
That
those.
word comes up again.
Comes up brutal is that's right. And we've got movie on the mount. We've got basketball days. We've got book weeks. We've got all sorts of those sorts of things. There's more. I can't even come up with them.
I think there's health week somewhere.
There's health week in there. Look, even things for
Every
movie.
week, some sort of week.
Yeah, that's right. And look, even for movie on the mount, like my class is tasked with setting up a video for the pre-show of showcasing our school, and I kind of sit there and go, "That's fantastic," but where the heck am I finding the time to do that? It's another thing, that you've got to organise. But it is a busy term. There's certainly no rest for the wicked.
Well, I'm going to try and dissect something here, Adam, that relates to the busyness of term 3, because there was a discussion at a recent staff meeting of ours about what our leadership coined the rhythm of the school year.
Yep. And just quickly before you go on, and this does come back to the PDP process that we discussed last time on the podcast for anyone listening, and very relevant.
It is, with mid-year reviews coming up for teachers, like mine is next week actually.
Yep.
I got the leadership of our school to send me through the document that they refer to at our meeting, which seems to be a draft document for the sort of new PDP process that's coming in for Victorian teachers. But I thought what was an interesting discussion was one of the pages talked about the rhythm of the school year. And it was discussed at our staff meeting, trying to pick apart the fact that the rhythm of the school year is that rhythm of things that happen, those perennial events that happen throughout the school year that can interrupt what is really happening in the classroom. Now, not saying that is a negative thing, but camps, athletics, all those sports days, all the extracurricular things that go on in schools can they're the rhythm of the school.
Yes.
And I think what our leadership was trying to talk about, they weren't saying this is a problem, they were just bringing it up as a discussion piece, was perhaps how could we change it so the rhythm of the school year is more fluid? And I think this is what this page was talking about, that the structures of your school year, all those things that are already cemented in place at the start of a year, how can they be more fluid so the classroom practice is actually, that's the structure of the school year, that's your main rhythm. Your main rhythm is what's going on in the class.
Yes, that's right.
I don't know whether I've dissected it. We might try and take a screenshot of this rhythm.
And put up.
Put it
That'd
on the
be
blog
great.
post,
Because I also think that rhythm. I think rhythm is a fantastic word. I think it gets upset a little bit sometimes because we know that there's a lot on in the year, but you can only think so far ahead. And when you sit down to plan a certain term, you go, right, this is all out of the way. We've done this and done that. We can sink our teeth into some teaching, and then. We've got a term planner, so we have a term overview for every term that gets sent to us, and you look at it and go, "Oh, I forgot about that. I've forgotten about that. I've forgotten about. Oh, that's coming up. And then other things get added on top of that, and that's where the rhythm gets done. And it's whether or not we can limit that while still having our extracurricular activities and doing all those things without disrupting that rhythm, so we're getting the best possible practice going in the classroom."
Sure, because I know that in some schools that I've worked in, and also some schools that I've had friends work in, that when they get their parent survey back about the school, that sometimes parents have really marked low the fact that they believe that there's not much extracurricular stuff going on at the school.
Yeah, we've had that too.
Whereas it is.
Yeah, it is.
And I'm not sure how schools can get their message across.
And I also think it's confusion and a misunderstanding of what extracurricular actually is. Like I said before, we've got a book week coming up in about a month. That's an extracurricular activity. That's the kids getting dressed up as their favourite book character and things. That's not just part of the curriculum. That is an extracurricular activity on top of what we do. But I think sometimes it's easy to misunderstand what an extracurricular activity actually is.
Sure. So we'll definitely put a screenshot of this rhythm of the school year graphic up on the blog just for you to have a look at and see whether you can dissect it. But I guess the point we wanted to make is that term 3 is just like any other term, Adam.
It is like any other term, and it's this myth and oasis of it being a wonderful term and the pressure coming off a little bit. Don't believe it. If you're a graduate teacher out there and you're listening to this, don't believe that. Term 3, it's going to take it out of you.
Sure. Okay, Adam, next topic. Recently in the Google Plus community, or one of the Google Plus communities that I'm a member of, one of my PLN people, really good teacher, posted a link to an EduBlogs article about Google Translate. And basically it was just the instructions about how to embed a Google Translate widget on your blog, because to help with drawing more audience from overseas. So if you're noticing maybe on your cluster map, on your little map on your blog, that you're getting lots of dots overseas, putting on a Google Translate for obvious reasons, so they can translate your blog and read what you've written. And it just got me thinking, like, what a fantastic idea, obviously, because I have thought, how do people read blogs in different languages unless they know the other language?
Exactly right, because they're going to go on there and not understand it at all. And not only that too, I know that's something you want to discuss as well, but having people reading your blog and having them leaving feedback and being a part of that discussion is such a powerful thing for the classroom, isn't it, Rick?
Look, it certainly is, and it got me thinking about not just about translating articles on a blog, but it just got me thinking about audience and purpose for writing. Because all through my career, and I'm sure you can agree with this, Adam, that it's always been a huge focus for schools. I mean, both schools that I've worked at some point, there's been a really big focus on our writing curriculum and how we deliver writing and how we can make it purposeful for students. Particularly, I've gone through some patches where we've tried to work out separate programs for reluctant boys, like getting boys to write. Because I think we're past that stage in my eyes where you can just say to a student, you need to write because you're at school. You need to write this piece because that's what you've got to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And someone did say that to me recently, that sometimes we just need to say that to students, but I don't know, I just think...
Sometimes it just doesn't cut the mustard. Giving them that, they're going to go, well, no, I want more than that.
That's right. And I understand it, and I have tried blogging for many years now, and I'm a huge believer in it. But when this is my conundrum, and I'll let you have a think about this, and our listeners can have a think about this. This is my conundrum, is that if I want to give students an audience, blogging is a great way to provide them with an audience. But when you've got 27 students, how can you make it relevant so they're all writing, if they want to be, all writing and publishing online some way? How do I make it relevant so they're getting a particular audience that suits their writing? They can give them real feedback and real information.
And it's not just going out to their peers. Not, the peers will jump on and comment and say, great comment, such and such. That's not giving that purposeful feedback and turning it into what you want, is it? You want to be able to get it out there to people who are going to read that, not just students, anyone, to leave them quality. It's quality feedback, isn't it? And the quality of the discussion that these kids know, well, I'm going to stick it on the blog, but that's the last play, that's the last step. They need to understand that, no, it's not the last step, that is only part of the step in getting the feedback and the understanding of a certain topic that they need.
Sure. So, I mean, some of the best audience feedback I've ever had was 3 or 4 years ago, and I had a writing workshop of mainly boys, just by chance, and we were investigating historical recounts. And the boys were interested in researching things like events in World War II. Some wanted to... investigate and write about 9/11 and the Bali bombings, and we talked about how we could do this in a way that was respectful, and also in a way, and we checked with parents and things like that. And the kids ended up, there was one student who wrote about the Bali bombings, and he did a really good job, and he just wrote about what happened in the lead up and the reaction from Australia, and that was a tragic event. And there was a parent at the school whose sister had actually died in the Bali bombings. Amazing.
Oh, wow.
And we put a note in it. We didn't know this at the time, but we put a note in the newsletter inviting the community to visit the blog, because the kids had recorded a podcast of them reading it. So it was the text version and the podcast. And we had this mother come into our class saying, I went on the blog and had a look, and I was amazed and I loved the way that this particular student had written about the piece, and that made that all of a sudden authentic. This student realised, my God, like this is a really important thing that I've done, and it's had an effect.
It gives it relevancy.
It does.
It's saying what I've written about, someone actually cares about it. It actually resonates with someone. I'm not just writing about it for the sake of it, and it goes on there and it's off in cyberspace. It's so relevant.
And I know that writing can be in so many different forms, but I'm going to come back to my question, Adam, and I might finish with this. My question is, how can I help the students find that authentic audience and that authentic purpose? How can I help every student find that? Because I reckon I can do it for maybe 4, 5, maybe 10 kids that want to blog. They know their purpose. but what about the others? So I'm open to. This is a question I reckon I'm going to have all through my career.
Yeah, I think it is too. So if you've got some feedback on that question, which we think is fantastic, please leave a comment on the blog or even hit us up on Twitter and let us know a few ideas and thoughts. And we'd love to get involved in that discussion with you. Now, Rick, I do want to finish the podcast today with a bit of a story. And we've come out of holidays, and I think one of a teacher's greatest fears is bumping into students on the holidays. You know that fear you have where if you live in the area where you teach, going to the supermarket, going down to a cafe, there's always this thing in the back of your mind of, am I going to bump into some of my students?
But you don't, Adam, so I find this interesting.
No, I don't. Well, the story I want to talk about this because it came up and I was actually talking to Mel about it, my partner, wife I should say. I'll get into trouble if she listens to that.
Right. It's all clear.
My first year of teaching, my first set of holidays, I was still living at home. This is back in about 2007, I think. I went to see a friend and stuff, and then it was a Monday afternoon of the first week of the holidays.
Right.
So I went down to the supermarket and thought, look, I've got the holidays ahead of me. I'm going to pick up a slab of beer. So I did a bit of shopping and bought a slab of beer. And
right.
I think you can see where this is going. So I've walked out of Liquorland, I think it might have been, with the slab up over my shoulder.
Oh, and you're actually
around
walking with it on your shoulder,
on my shoulder,
yeah.
right into a family that was pretty straight down the line, and then I had to stop and go, oh, hey, how are you going? All the while thinking, I got this slab of VB on my shoulder, and there's no way I can hide it. It's not like it was in a bag, and I could just put it behind me a little bit and sort of, kind of move in a way that, they can't really see what's in there. There it was on my shoulder, and this fear of looking at them. And this is my first year of teaching. I couldn't care less now.
Absolutely, yeah.
But my first holidays, popping it up over the shoulder, walking out of Liquorland straight into a family, worst fears realised.
And even worse, it was VB.
And it was. I was a young grasshopper back then who drinks VB. Well, Foz does. They're mid strength. But have you ever had that? Like talking to people out there, it is your worst fear bumping into families, particularly when you go shopping. It's shocking.
Yeah, I feel like I've always enjoyed the distance between work and where I live.
Because you do have a distance. And
I always have at the previous school. I've heard stories about teachers even being like, I remember in my early days some young teachers being out at a pub on a Saturday night or at a club and seeing some parents, and that's an interesting one.
That's got to be weird. I haven't had that, thankfully, but sort of you're on the dance floor going over there and there's a parent over there that you've had a chat to about their kids riding on the Friday afternoon. That's got to be weird. And look, up until recently, I did live near to where I taught.
Yes.
And some afternoons where you had to make a stop going down the road, to go to the supermarket, and you'd see them and they yell out your name from halfway down.
The yelling out of them.
And everyone else in the road turns and looks at you and like, oh hey, how are you going? Just keep it down. Don't announce my presence. Or you play a game of Super Mario Brothers as you try to dodge them all the way through the supermarket.
That's a good way to describe it.
So you sort of have
Mario Kart.
And you're trying to get round, get past Bowser.
You just wish there's a pipe that comes up that you can hide in,
Yeah, that's right. Just and then you go and get out of the way. So
the thing I can relate to, just to wrap this up, you asked me if I can relate to it.
Yep.
Get this one. 2 years ago, I went to a conference in Brisbane.
Yep.
Sitting at Brisbane Airport about to board.
Yep.
And Brisbane Airport, and I heard this voice behind me. Name is KT. a family right behind me. Now this Brisbane Airport, quite big, and lots of cafes, lots of places to sit.
Yep.
The table right behind me, and I won't. It's just a few years ago, so it won't get back. But it was the kind of, I guess it was the kind of student that I didn't really want to see. Just put it at that.
Yep.
So I did that sort of hello, and then sort of whispered to the bloke I was with, I need to get out of here. I need to get out. and then sure enough, lining up to board, same flight, of course, same flight home.
Yep.
The only saving grace was that they must have been down the back of the plane and I was up the front. So.
Which is, that's the only saving grace. So, hey, have you got any funny holiday stories about bumping into anyone? We'd love to hear them, because I tell you what, it is, I reckon, one of the teachers' greatest fears. So if you've got anything, let us know. So here ends episode 5, Rick, and we just want to thank everyone out there again for tuning in. We really appreciate all the support and feedback we get. And next week, episode 6, may be a long distance podcast.
It might well be. We'll have to see how we go. I'll be in. I could very possibly be in Melbourne
Yes.
the night before a conference that I'm very much looking forward to, the DLTV conference.
Yep.
I'm sure some of our listeners will be there. So we might try and tee it up long distance.
I reckon that sounds absolutely fantastic, and I actually want to hear more about this PD too. So I'd be interested to hear that in the coming weeks on the podcast. Sure. So again, thanks for listening. I'm Adam Labaz.
I'm Rick Taylor Thompson, and we've been Two Regular Teachers.